All right, here we go. What we're all here for. And we're coming right out of the gate with one of my favorites, Jan Reynolds. You with me, Alex? In the 1970s and 80s, Jan busted out of the University of Vermont, leaving an indelible mark on the adventure sports industry and so much more. She has skied from the highest peaks on the planet, and she did it in leather boots and 3-pin bindings. She's traversed the Southern Alps in New Zealand. She's a founding member of the U.S. biathlon team. She's floated in a hot air balloon to the summit of Everest. She's been featured in articles in the New York Times, National Geographic, and countless others. She's lived and written about the indigenous people on all 7 continents. When you read a headline about Jan Reynolds, it's unbelievable. She's a real-life superhero. One of the headlines I found reads like this. This is Jan Reynolds, who loves doing the things no woman has ever done. And yet there's still another one that says, is there anything she can't do? Because of Jan Reynolds, there is no glass ceiling. She made everything possible. She set the standard. And she did it all before social media and decades and even before videotape. She went viral before viral was a thing. She's one of the first sponsored athletes by the North Face. If you're like me and you're in the room tonight and you've been lucky enough to be sponsored by a winter sports brand without an Olympic medal or a world championship title to your name, we stand on the shoulders of Jan Reynolds. Let's learn more about Jan.
Jan Reynolds earned widespread acclaim for her record-setting high-altitude adventures around the globe, for helping spark the first backcountry explosion on edged cross-country skis, and for pioneering corporate sponsorships as the first athlete to be signed by the North Face as a professional skier and adventurer. She accomplished this as the only woman in a pack of men. In 1984, Esquire named her its Athlete of the Decade, and Ultra Sport dubbed her Indiana Jan, being the first woman to ski from the summit of 24,757-foot Muscata Peak in the Pamirs, soaring and crashing in a hot air balloon at 29,000 feet over Everest for an award-winning film, and being the leader of the first U.S. women's biathlon team merely set the foundation for her life's work. Those experiences would coalesce into her ultimate calling as a globe-trotting, award-winning photographer and naturally gifted storyteller who has written 20 books. Reynolds was born April 30th, 1956, on a dairy farm in Middlebury, Vermont, the 6th of 7 children. At the University of Vermont, Reynolds excelled in 4 varsity sports and capped off her career by winning the final leg of the National Collegiate Cross-Country Ski Championships at the Trapp Family Lodge in Stowe, handing UVM the team title. On that same day, she was drawn into the world of global adventurer, future Hall of Famer Ned Gillette. Gillette, who was managing the Trapp Resort, agreed to hire her into what would be much more than a job, beginning a roughly decade-long companionship with Gillette that included the first freeheel ski and climb of the Southern Alps in New Zealand in 1979. A trek around Mount Everest, a journey as the first Westerners to ski and coach in Manchuria, and the Friendship Expedition to Palmyras, culminating with a high-altitude skiing record that stood for 8 years. In 1982, Reynolds and Gillette were named as the North Face's first professional athletes and were paid equally. Hundreds of outdoor companies soon followed, and the stage was set for thousands of future athletes to flourish with corporate backing. In 1990, Reynolds dedicated herself to shaping the future with a series of Vanishing Cultures books for children in documenting indigenous cultures on all 7 continents. She covers their day-to-day struggles and triumphs in an ever-changing and threatening world. For a career of barrier-breaking adventure and global humanity, Jan Reynolds earns induction into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame.
Ooh, baby. Jan Reynolds, having been elected by representation of the 15 million skiers and snowboarders in America, we hereby bestow upon you on this night in Big Sky, Montana, our country's highest snow sport award, the Medal of Honor, and confer upon you from this day forward, Friday, March 24th of 2023, induction into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame, where, baby, your accomplishments will forever be remembered.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I have many people to thank, and I thank the whole Hall of Fame crew and for everyone being here tonight to make this super special. Now, who would have thought a Vermont dairy farm girl who was number 6 of 7 kids in a family that didn't ski and was so cross-eyed she looked at the end of her nose. Yes, I had amblyopia. They fixed it. Who would think I'd be here? So your passion can take you far. Skiing has literally taken me around the world. And when you think about it, people thought it was unusual to take Nordic skis with just a toe binding in the biggest mountains around the world. But when you think, really, skiing has been around for, they say, about 8,000 years. So the way I ski is the way skiing has been for almost all of time. When skis first came to the US, it was Snowshoe Thompson who would deliver the mail from Nevada to California. And he had a huge sack of mail, which I could relate to on expeditions. I carry about 50 pounds. And he would skin up one side of the Sierra and then drop into these beautiful big tellies on these long wooden skis. So basically, what skiing has always been was what I was doing, nothing new. Then when we went out and we set some records, one of the most interesting things was I wasn't taking off to set a record. National Geographic sponsored us, and it wasn't until weeks later they called me and said, hey, you set the women's high-altitude skiing record, and the whole expedition has the highest descent from a summit. So it's really kind of interesting to think about that. What's most important to me is the wild places and the wild people that I spent time with and the wild times we had. And when we set a lot of these records, I got some attention, and it really wasn't about gender at all for me. I was interviewed once, well, oftentimes, they had me several times on the Today Show, Good Morning America, and I was interviewed by Jane Pauley. And before you come on, they give you your set of questions. So you kind of know what people are going to be asking you. So Jane Polly and I had the questions. She's feeling really comfortable with me. She can see that I like to talk. So she leaves her script and she looks at me and she goes, so Jan, what do you think of the ERA? Well, Equal Rights Amendment, this is the 1980s. And ladies, think about this. It wasn't until 1990 that Congress passed the Women's Health Equity Act. So what that means is, until 1990, all medical trials were only done on men. They were the only ones. I mean, we have different bodies. I think you've noticed. So during the 1980s, I'm with Jane Polly, millions of people in the world are watching us, and she says, so Jan, what do you think of the ERA? And I look at her and I go, so Jane, what's that? So being the professional she is, her eyes are like saucers. I'm sure she's thinking, why did I ever leave the script? And she goes, she drops back and punts, and she says, well, I guess that answers my question, and she went right back with the script. But that really is a good story to say that gender didn't come into play in these expeditions. We were all just equal teammates. And again, we were all doing it because of the wild places and the wild people we spent time with and the wild times that we had. And there is one thing that really did shift my point of view, and that was I was working for National Geographic again, and I was covering the ancient salt trade, and I was soloing over the Himalaya, and I had Sherpas that were with me up to about 20,000 feet. And I'm skiing down into Tibet, and I can hear the Sherpas behind me. I've gone maybe a quarter, half mile, but you can hear up in the mountains. And they're making this ruckus, and they're yelling, and they're screaming, and I figure it's about me. So I turn around and look, and then I could see these little people just gesticulating, and what was down there, I finally tuned in. I was having so much fun skiing down before the crevasse field, and it was the Chinese army. And they had these little canvas green army boots, and they had pistols, and I was on the biathlon team, so I knew the range of a rifle, and all I had to do was turn around and ski up, and there was no way they were gonna catch me. So that's exactly what I did, but it was hilarious. The Sherpas were just beside themselves. But what that did was it shifted my attitude to wanting to spend time with these beautiful indigenous people that I met when I climbed and skied around the world. So I did write a book series called Vanishing Cultures, and I lived with the Tuareg in the Sahara. The men wear veils, not the women. I was with the Yanomama in the Amazon, the reindeer herders up north for Europe, the Inuit, the Yanomama in the Amazon. So skiing really has taken me around the world, and skiing gave me the gift of finding how I could serve, what I could do to give back. And also, so I'm grateful for that. I'm also so grateful you all came tonight to make this such a special night for me. And I'm sorry, it's a little emotional, but thank you very much.